And it was quite a remarkable experience. And even now, after almost 7 years, it's like, okay, now what? What's next? Because it still feels like a grind, and it's like, oh, why is it so hard? And it's like, well, this is what you signed up for. This is exactly what you wanted, so don't bitch out on me now. But in doing that, sobriety and recovery, like all of this stuff that I've learned in the 12 steps is what has given me the life that I have today. And, because I was so hesitant to even touch the steps, I was like, what the hell is this? None of this stuff makes sense. I saw the word God and I'd like haul ass out of the room. It really has taken some time, but now, looking back, I'm like, well, everything that I have today is as direct results from the steps. So that's pretty much where my recovery story originated from.
I love that. Our program is an alternative to 12-step, but there's always so many similarities, and how, however somebody gets sober, it's like, it's great. And, being able to meet people where they're at to put them on that path without sending up those harsh triggers that turns people away, which is what happened to me. I heard some harsh triggers in the beginning from AA, which is admit you're powerless, turn over to God. And I'm like, I'm out. I can't do either one of these things. Forget it. So it's, like trying to be able to reach more people so that we can help more people. And I'm all about any form of help that we can do to help people get on the road of recovery, for sure.
That's super important because, and I found my own biases too in the beginning. Like I was like, oh, well, it's the 12 steps. And I was like, well, hold on a minute, because that obviously didn't work for me the first 10 years. Yeah. So, and that's what's awesome is there are so many different ways to get sober, from recovery coaches to smart recovery and what you have, there's no right or wrong way. Right. So that's been a big realization as well over the past several years.
Yeah, I love that. So you're and I love your recovery story because obviously it's your foundation of who you are and why you're so strong, and I really appreciate that. But you also seem to have a pretty strong foundation, like pre-addiction. So I think we see like that to be a big corollary too to people that are really successful, is when they have a strong foundation, they tend to be able to fall back to that, which is nice.
Yeah.
So what is your day like now? So you ended up leaving, because it's funny, I saw in your bio that you have these world records in, was it Auckland or Australia or over there, Queensland, so.
Oh yeah, no, just a state champion in jiu-jitsu, and then
that's all.
Yeah. And then, it sounds cool, but it's funny because we were talking about taking compliments earlier versus like being humble, and I often have to check myself because my ego is like, I'm always either like up here, like, oh, I'm KO, you don't know who I am, bitch, or like down here in the gutter, it's like, oh, I'm a little Kortney K, I'm a little fat piece of, SHIT. But, at the end of the day, it's like keeping it real and being like, yes, for example, the Australian first female Australian arm wrestling champion, like there was only like 5 women there, and they came from all over the world, and I felt bad because so many of them have been training for so many years, and I just rock up and I had like 6 months of training, if that, but I was so much stronger than all of them. I was able to just like pow pow pow, so it sounds really prestigious, but a lot of times, people are just blowing smoke up their own butt, but then again, there's not a lot of people that can say that. I'm the only person. 100%. So that's pretty cool.
A million people wouldn't have even tried. They would have been
like, this is
my sphere. So the fact that you even, went for it with, minimal training compared to everybody else, like that makes you a rock star right there.
There you go. And it's funny, because the whole watermelon thing, because that's probably like what I'm known for across the planet, is crushing watermelons between my legs. And that started, in fact, it's a whole chapter in my book. I call them lessons because they're, learning experiences, but was how that got started. And sure enough, that I went to do this called scissors, where you choke guys out with your legs around their neck or around their body in various positions.
I bet they enjoy that though.
Okay. They pay a lot of money, and the guy said,
I can see
it. Said, oh, I've only had 2 women knock me out in 20 years. And I was like, oh, okay. You know how to push my buttons,
Yeah.
don't challenge me, dude.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I put him in a figure 4, which is like a rear naked choke in MMA, but you do it with your legs. And I knocked him out and I heard this really loud pop, but I thought I had broke his neck. And he had in his office, he was the one that was like, do you think you could crush watermelons? And he had this blue tarp and, 3 watermelons. And I'm like looking at him, looking at the tarp, looking at him. And I was still super high. I hadn't gotten clean at this point. And I mean, I truly thought I broke this guy's neck. And I'm just sitting there dying, like, oh my God, I'm going to prison. Am I supposed to bury his body? Like, is there some cameras here? And I let go of him, and finally, like 10 seconds went by and he started snoring. And I was, oh my God, thank God. And after he woke up, after I played it off, I was like, did you know, I thought, I heard this pop. And he said, oh, I've had a motorcycle bike accident as my sternum pops really easily. And I said, oh my God. So, but because I had so much adrenaline rushing through my body, I believe that's why it was so easy for me to crush those watermelons. Yeah. So that after doing that, that's when it first went viral. And then, I went on like the Guinness Book of World Record Gone Wild TV show. And a couple months after that, Stan Lee, the creator of Marvel Comics, has a show called Superhumans. And they recruited me for that show. And then, after that, it went, because shortly before that show the video went viral again. And the cool thing, is to think like, wow, I started using speed because I wanted to have a thigh gap and I wanted to have legs like Kate Moss. Fast forward a decade and I'm now the woman with the world's deadliest thighs for being strong and powerful. So to make that full circle, that's just a direct result of staying sober and clean, and it just shows that miracles are truly possible. As much as all of this stuff sounds so dumb, we hear, just for today, one day at a time, let go and let God. It's like, oh, shut up. But after a while, you start to realize that, okay, there's really some merit to this stuff. Don't leave 5 minutes before the miracle. Like all this really cool stuff can happen in recovery. So as long as we stay clean and sober, because as soon as we pick up, all of those opportunities go out the window. Yep. And yeah, it's still difficult. Like every day right now, it's been a struggle because we are, thanks to COVID, and it's hard too, right? Because every entrepreneur thinks their business is the best. It's their baby, you know what I mean? And so I've been doing this gig for almost 7 years now. And I'm like, we're supposed to be, we're changing lives. And because our brand is all about women empowerment and women being able to come together as a sisterhood, because we believe women are held back as a gender because we're programmed to see each other as competition. And a lot of these principles I took straight from 12-step recovery, which is, and implemented them into my brand, which is really quite cool. But yeah, you just realize that it doesn't get easier, we just get stronger, because it's like being an entrepreneur, I'd say over the past 6 years has been more difficult than getting clean off of Oxycontin, methamphetamines, and alcohol combined. Yep. Right? Because it's like every single day I've got to let go of control and trust the process. And, right now having all 3 of my business checking accounts are overdrawn and being like, well, we're meant to be a multi-million-dollar brand and yet my accounts are overdrawn. Like, how is this possible? It's running a business. It's difficult,
especially a startup.
Yeah, 100%. But what recovery has taught me is that I get to do this. I don't have to do this. Yeah. What I have to do is stay clean and sober, and that's it. And if I don't, then I don't get to do anything, So it's pretty straightforward when you break it down into its easiest form, because you and I are complex characters. Yeah. Just like all of our brothers and sisters. They say, recovery is a simple program for complicated people. And that couldn't be more true in my opinion. Because we're a special breed, whether we're lacking endorphins or, certain amounts of serotonin, we're adrenaline junkies. We need to get complacent really easily. It just is what it is. And
Well, I think there's also a lot of benefits. We had Rich Savini here last week, and he wrote this book, The Attributes. And as we were going through them, because like 90% of my staff are all, in recovery. So we've all been there, done that, and we all are very capable people. And I think it almost translates really well into entrepreneurship, into whatever, because we're used to hustling. We're used to overcoming adversity. We're used to like, you got to do these things to support this habit, and you've got to, get better the next day so you can go keep supporting that. And
right.
So it really translates, and I'm not encouraging anybody to go become an addict or alcoholic in order to become a good entrepreneur. But there's a lot of skills that we really like overly, I think, developed, and that translates really well to what we do. Adaptability, thick skin, like we know how to pivot and handle a lot of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and even through the pandemic, and you mentioned that, as a business to survive through these unprecedented times, there was no manual for any of us to try to figure that out. And so I'm sure, your pre-skills helped you work through that as well.
100%. That, as well as, like the tools we learn in recovery, that's really what kept me going. It's like, well, at the end of the day, we have input and we can change the outcome of things to a certain degree. But also I find, because I'm far from a religious person. And I tell people the extent of my religion is there is a God and I am not it. And I have to remind myself that on an hourly basis often. But, it's just doing God's will and saying, okay, well, my will is that I should have been on Oprah already. And I'm pissed off that she hasn't called me, but yeah. God's will is suffer in silence or whatever, and knowing that, okay, well, it's not my ego that needs the recognition or the first class flight or whatever. If I'm meant to have that stuff, I will. But in the meantime, it's like just showing up and being an instrument, because, it's so easy to forget how bad it got. And I find that to be more and more true every day as time passes, is because, and I was a blackout drinker, so on a daily basis, I'm like, oh, there's so much stuff I don't remember. And it's so easy to just be like, okay, well, enough time has lapsed. I'm sure I'd be able to hack it now, And so the more I stay sober, the more I need to stay involved and have conversations like this and share this information with people, because otherwise I'll forget. And then I'll end up right back where I started, because I've tried that so many times, and it never works. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, like with everything, it's just consistency is key. And, if I think we give ourselves, a cheat, a relapse, we're setting ourselves up for failure whenever that becomes okay to just once it, all that, and I'm not going to say all that hard work you put in goes, out the window, but at the same time, it's much harder to start over than just ride out the tough times.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I was reading your bio, and again, similarity, you're also a CrossFit coach. Do you currently CrossFit? That's something you do? Do you coach as well?
Oh, it's funny. I do coach. I have an app. So I've got this platform that, and there's 4 different programs, and the one that I push the most and I'm on is called Get Massive. So, men, women, whoever, it's all about, getting bigger and taking up more space. But CrossFit has always been one of my massive loves. And so I've really missed it. My gym used to be 3 blocks from my house, and it got bought. It got sold and bought, and it's now like turning into like a boxing gym or something like that. But CrossFit is, I have such an immense respect for it, because it's so addictive and it's so challenging and it's so functional, and the community in which you build, because community is everything.
Yep.
Right. And that's what I found in recovery. And part of the biggest thing that I love is being able, I got this teetotaler tattoo, and it's like, let me be loud and find all my other people, because it's so cool to go into, I've been in meetings in Thailand, Australia, Turkey, Greece, China, all over the world. And it's like, nothing keeps us apart. And it's being able to say, oh, I get you, and be anywhere in the world and feel like you're amongst family. So to have that, and whether you identify with, say you drive a Mini Cooper like I do, and you find, I had a Mini Cooper driver the other day honk and wave, and I'm like, do I know you? Oh, you got a Mini Cooper. Hey, or like what we've built with Girl, like the whole point is like when you see another girl in girl clothing, you know straight away that she's your sister and not your competition. So to have these opportunities to build communities of like-minded people that they have something to identify with is quite powerful, so I find that the community piece is really big. I'm trying to forget where that question originated from. And
CrossFit community.
CrossFit, that's right. So with CrossFit,
we'll always bring it back to CrossFit, don't worry.
So with CrossFit, it's like